The Wall Street Journal for Tuesday, March 10, 2026, leads with the Tehran regime showing no signs of yielding despite punishing airstrikes and a heavy war toll. Leadership unity and military resilience are testing the goal of bringing down the regime. Simultaneously, oil prices have seen a remarkable reversal after hitting a Sunday night peak, trading at $85 a barrel. Financial markets mirrored this about-face, with the S&P 500 and Dow rebounding to gains of 0.8 and 0.5%, while the Nasdaq rallied 1.4%. On page 2, the outlook remains clouded as two inflation gauges paint opposite pictures. The Consumer Price Index stood at 2.4% in January, while the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index remained stubbornly at 2.9%. This discrepancy complicates the Federal Reserve's path toward interest rate cuts. In other news, Alexander Butterfield, the White House aide who revealed the existence of Nixon's taping system, has died at the age of 99. Page 3 reports on the ongoing Department of Homeland Security shutdown, causing TSA security lines to drag on for hours at major airports. In New York, 2 men have been charged in a planned terrorist attack at an anti-Islamic protest near the mayor's residence. Additionally, Anthropic has filed a lawsuit against the administration over the designation of the company as a security threat, highlighting a growing rift between Silicon Valley and the Pentagon. On page 4, we see reports of new drone companies vying to meet military demand following the ban on Chinese models. A bipartisan Senate bill aims to restrict the build-to-rent industry, requiring large investors to sell newly built homes to individuals within 7 years to improve affordability. In the academic world, Lawrence Summers has lost his affiliation with the National Bureau of Economic Research, stemming from his historical ties to Jeffrey Epstein. World News on pages 6 and 8 details Iranian strikes targeting U.S. radar systems in the Middle East, while the army rushes counter-drone systems battle-tested in Ukraine to the region. Iran is building a mythology around its new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, framing his father's death as martyrdom to rally the religious base. Analysts suggest this signals a maximalist stance in any future peace discussions. Page 9 examines the potential release of oil reserves to stabilize markets, while page 10 reports on Ethiopia amassing troops near the Eritrean border, seeking access to the sea. This move has revived fears of a new civil war in the region. In Latin America, the administration is urging military action against drug cartels, proposing a new security initiative called the Shield of the Americas. Continuing through the journal, page 11 reports a plunge in German industrial orders, while page 12 asks if multi-cancer blood tests are ready for clinical use. Page 13 discusses the lifestyle choices of retirees in San Francisco and the latest trends in professional footwear. Page 14 reviews a contemporary interpretation of Romeo and Juliet and highlights the happenings for the week of March 10. The opinion section begins on page 15. Walter Russell Mead argues that Iran's strategy of choking the Strait of Hormuz is testing American resolve, suggesting the war could end in an American defeat, a major victory, or a fragile balance of power. Mary Julia Koch reflects on the lasting impact of the pandemic on her generation, while William McGurn critiques the Vatican's stance on the conflict. A featured book review of Mark Hertling's Wartime Journal provides a father's perspective on combat. Pages 16 and 17 analyze the geopolitical landscape. The review and outlook suggests that Iran is losing the war as its military assets are systematically degraded. An investigation into the return of monarchy in Iran notes that the new leadership lacks the religious credentials of its predecessors. Alan Blinder examines the administration's use of Section 122 of the Trade Act to impose across-the-board tariffs, despite Supreme Court pushback on the use of emergency powers. Business and finance news on page B1 leads with Novo Nordisk selling weight loss drugs through Hims and Hers, and a legal feud between flying taxi makers Archer and Joby. On page B2, Nasdaq announces a plan to offer tokenized stocks in partnership with Kraken, aiming to modernize traditional stock markets with 24/7 trading. Shell has also agreed to sell its Jiffy Lube unit for $1.3 billion to focus on higher return opportunities. Page B3 reports that gunmaker Sturm Ruger is fighting a potential takeover by Italian rival Beretta. On page B4, AI infrastructure startup Nscale has raised $2 billion at a $14.6 billion valuation, backed by NVIDIA and Dell. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise has also raised its earnings outlook as it races to secure memory components amid a global supply shortage. Roche shares fell 3% after a breast cancer drug trial missed its primary objective. The Markets Digest on page B6 shows the Dow Jones Industrial Average finishing at 47,740.80, a gain of 0.50%. The Nasdaq Composite ended at 22,695.95. Interest rates remained steady, with the 30-year fixed mortgage at 6.00% and the 5-year adjustable rate mortgage at 5.84%. Treasury yields for 2-year notes settled at 3.592%. Global currency markets show the euro at 0.8593 per dollar and the yen at 157.67. In the commodities sector on page B7, crude oil settled at $94.77 per barrel, while gold was at $5,091.50 per troy ounce. Commodity futures indicate a volatile outlook for energy markets as the conflict in the Middle East continues to impact global supply chains. The biggest 1,000 stocks list on page B8 shows significant volume movers in the tech and energy sectors. On page B9, the private credit industry faces another setback as a London mortgage company collapses amid allegations of double pledging collateral. This adds to the growing drumbeat of failed deals in the $2 trillion private credit sector, leading to increased scrutiny and potential write-downs for fund managers. The Herd on the Street column on page B10 warns that oil prices are already near a painful level, with U.S. oil intensity twice as high as the European Union's. Analysts suggest that higher-for-longer energy costs could ding economic growth and buoy inflation, ushering in a stagflation dynamic. In the biotech sector, stocks rallied after news of an FDA official's exit, while private equity firm TrueLink Capital successfully raised $2 billion for its second fund. Today's Wall Street Journal provides a detailed map of a world in transition, from geopolitical conflicts and shifting energy markets to the frontiers of AI and finance. The analysis across these 28 pages underscores the complexity of the current economic environment and the resilience of global institutions. This has been your comprehensive briefing for Tuesday, March 10, 2026.